Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MongoDB Podcast Live. I'm Shane McAllister. I'm one of the leads on our developer relations team here at MongoDB. So today I'm joined by Samir Argawal, Chief Product Technology Officer with Agmeta, to take us through today's topic. So with that, let's get Samir onto the show. Samir, you're very welcome to MongoDB Podcast Live. How are you?
Very well, Shane. It's great to be with you, and nice to be with the rest of the folks on the call.
Excellent. Yeah, it's great to see everybody introducing themselves in the chat. As ever, I'm really impressed with the range of, I suppose, global audience that we have. So, see, as usual, a lot of people from India joining, but Omaha as well too, West Midlands in the UK, Seattle, Italy. So you're all very welcome. Samir, you're in San Francisco, right?
I am.
Okay, so not so cold there as the rest of the cold snap in the East Coast US?
It's not nearly as cold, but it's cold and beautiful.
Okay.
It's a nice sunny day. No complaints whatsoever.
Excellent. Well, Samir, what I love to do before we get into the meat of today's topic is learn a little bit about your career path to date. How did you get started? Where have you been? What companies have you worked in? Before we get to the Agmeta story, tell us a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. So I'm a second-time entrepreneur, have run global engineering organizations, run global product organizations, managed P&Ls, worked at startups and large companies. That tells you a little bit about how old I must be to have done all of those things.
Listen, there's always a history in everyone, and I think
there you exactly right.
There is a statistic, Samir, about the startups are generally founded by people who've gone through an awful lot before. We tend to think of startups by the young 20-somethings surviving on a diet of Coke and pizza, but I think the successful ones are much, much more towards the other end of the age spectrum.
Absolutely. There's, I think it's a mix, who knows, but be as that may, I used to work for a startup, sort of an early employee at a startup in the golden age of the internet, the circa 2000. We were acquired by Nokia, spent several years at Nokia, including some in Finland. Another story for another time when somebody moves from Bay Area to Finland.
Back when mobile phones were all different and all the models, and back before there was some interest there, except for currently since 2007, everything's been a rectangular piece of glass and plastic and metal.
Absolutely.
Right?
So I saw some of that in the making, which is really interesting. So lots of history there. I also worked at other product organizations in security, but really, and in AI, a company that was focused entirely on AI, which gave me ringside seats to seeing what works and does not work in AI. But the really interesting sort of part of my journey was when I ran P&L centers and really sort of felt and saw firsthand what customer loss means, what happens when a customer churns out, and what happens when you don't know why your customers churn out. And as I spoke to others who were people like myself and customers, I saw that there was a problem that was always present. People didn't know why their customers were leaving. And most times they would find out much too late that the customers had left. And by then there was really nothing to be done. And I think this was something that kind of stuck in the back of my head. And then an opportunity came along and I said, you know what, why don't we solve a problem that focuses entirely on that? And that's kind of how Agmeta came into being.
Excellent. So like the best startup stories, they're founded out of a level of personal insight, a level of frustration, and a level of, I think I can solve this problem, or at least make it better, right?
Absolutely. I've got a personal anecdote to share on that sort of front. I had been with the same internet service provider and cable TV provider for, 20 plus years.
Yeah, and as we all do, because we were loath to move and to change.
I know, exactly.
Hassle, right?
Yeah. Exactly right. And so, it just continued. And then about a year back, my bill goes up by 35%.
Okay.
And I was prepared for the drill. You call them, they tell you that your promotion has expired, they put you on a new promotion, they charge you another $10 a month. I knew the drill down pat. So, I do call them. And this guy was really nice. He told me that your promotion has expired. And I said, we are following the script here. This is going to be fine. And then he comes back and says, but there is no other promotion. And I'm like, this guy doesn't get it. So
because
very
usually you
nice guy.
expect the fact that you phoned up and taken the time to,
Yes,
get the next
exactly.
promotion a year on or get some savings, right? He told you there was
Exactly
none?
right. There was none. And I
Wow.
said,
Okay.
you know what? Green guy doesn't know what he's doing. Let me
Hmm.
just call back again. So I called back another 3 times over the next day or two. And each time I was told that there is no other promotion. And I decided to leave them. After 20 plus years, I decided to leave them.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and I moved on. A full week later, 4 calls, and a full week later, I get a call from this ISP, and they go, we noticed you've been with us for more than 20 years. Would you
Hmm.
mind telling us why you left? A full week later, they still didn't know why I left. And if that happens to me,
Hmm.
$3,500, give or take a year, customer, and they didn't know why I left. This must happen to other customers as well. And I think people can
Sure.
relate to these kinds of conversations. What if this could be made so simple that these guys could have seen it on day one or day two, that
Okay.
this customer is
Okay.
going to be leaving them? They could have made it right then, rather than a week later when the ship had sailed and they call in and say, you know what, we can take you back to the previous prices and stuff like that. It was just too late.
And
And
like
that's the
that's a
problem we
pattern
want
you
to
see a
solve.
lot of the time. Do you know, like even when you unsubscribe to an email newsletter, for example, and then you get a sorry to see you go, what was wrong? What, da, 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 da. It's like,
Right.
well, they never asked that before. And it's the same thing, I suppose, going back to your original example. You expected to get a better offer. You've been with them for 20 years at whatever many thousands of dollars per year. You're you were a locked in lifetime customer, and 3 calls later, you went, I've had enough of this, right? And they didn't know.
Absolutely.
They didn't know.
And they didn't know. They didn't know.
Okay. Okay.
And I have to say, for somebody at that size, that scale, and technology savvy company that it was, if they didn't know, what does that mean for the rest?
Mm,
Other organizations, other companies that may not have the wherewithal, to be able to do that. So what if we could make it dead simple for them
mhm,
to
mhm.
see which customer is at risk of churn, and
Okay.
also very importantly, where there is an upsell opportunity. And that's the other part that gets missed out, because everybody is so focused on churn that you forget the fact that there is the two parts to the customer lifetime value. There's one
Mhm.
about reducing churn, of course,
Sure.
but the
Sure.
second is about getting more from this customer.
Mm.
And if you miss that part, that's money you left on the table. So
Yeah,
that's what we
totally.
wanted to address.
Yeah. And I suppose given that this is everywhere, Samir, how like and this is a huge market, right? Every company selling a service has, phone lines or online chat, etc. What was it that kind of, other than your frustration, did you see going, hold on, I can use my technical expertise, my knowledge, what I've worked with to date to maybe solve this problem? What was the other piece of you kind of going, I think I can work on this?
Yeah, I think the one is just the sort of the technology evolution. Things
Okay.
that seem kind of far away, things that seem like you're going to get answers that using technology, you're going to get answers that are not really close enough or precise enough. To
Hmm.
moving
Hmm.
to a point where you say technology makes it easy for me to do this.
Mm, mm,
And while people are trying to solve super complicated problems, here's a simple problem. This problem doesn't go away. It
mhm,
never gets out of fashion.
mm,
Um, you can replace humans with AI based agents. AI doing the
mhm,
talking. You can have AI chatbots, but on the other side, you still have humans, and their customer experience matters. If
mm.
they make an investment in a company, they pick up a phone. It's not easy. I mean, in today's day and age, I personally don't like the idea of picking up a phone and calling a business. I'd rather just do something on the website and be done with it. But if I'm
Yeah, you
spending
you
time
and me
chatting,
both. I think yeah, look, it depends. Obviously, I'm more comfortable, using a chat tool. My wife, on the other hand, definitely picks up the phone. I think she does better than me most of the time when she talks to these companies. But I had, like you mentioned there, your ISP. My deal is up, last month or something, in December, and yesterday I went, okay, I better, exactly as you said, better phone them, or get in touch with them, try and get a better
yeah,
deal. So I did what I would do: go to the website, click the chat button, And then I was told, no, you're not through to the broadband, you're through to the mobile or the cell phone. I went, no, well, I clicked the button on the broadband page. Why am I with the mobile team? And then they said, oh, we'll pass you on. And I got passed on to the home broadband. And I went, no, my package is business because I need it for work, obviously, etc. And they're going, oh, you have to phone us. And that was 30 minutes of crazy chat stuff,
I know.
So
right.
Yeah, I think, and we talk about a lot of topics on the podcast live, but this one, I think everybody who joins us in the comments has a story to probably tell in this same space. So I'm really looking forward to kind of, the comparison and what you're solving in Agmeta. But talk to us a little bit about the old way, because when I finish one of these calls, I usually get a survey or a text or an SMS to go, how would you rate your experience? How that obviously didn't work for them, or it's not uptake or anything on that, maybe?
No, it is. I think at a gut level, we all understand, every business understands they need to keep their customers happy. But I think there is a gap, there is a chasm between how the various parts of the organization work. And I think this is where we started to sort of hone in on and say, can we make a difference here? I'll give you a typical sort of journey. Somebody calls into a contact center. Contact center metrics are very different from the metrics of the guy who's trying to retain a customer in the marketing organization, for instance.
Okay.
So somebody calls in, just like me. I called in. The guy was very polite, very nice, and told me he could not help me. From his perspective, he resolved the problem. The call was a resolution. There's nothing we can do for this guy. That was the resolution he reached. From my perspective, it was 100% loss.
It stuck to the script. He couldn't do anything for you, and that was that, right?
But from his point of view, this was a resolution. Nothing could be done was the resolution. From my point of view, it was 100% loss. There was no resolution whatsoever. My bill was still very high. And this is the problem that I think continues to exist. And everybody says, you've got to get right customer experience. The customer experience needs to be good. We all sort of swear by customer experience. The challenge is, how do you really measure customer experience, right? And this is a big question. And typically, the shorthand version has been, if you had a positive sentiment on the call or on the chat, then this must be a good experience. And I just think that is not the full story. That's part of the story. And the analogy I like to use is, the blind men sort of feeling an elephant for the first time. One catches hold of the tail, another catches hold of the leg, another catches hold of the trunk. And they all have a different picture of what that elephant looks like, what that elephant must be. And I think customer experience is somewhat that way. We just kind of, feel the different things and say, that's customer experience. But what is customer experience? How do you quantify it? So what we've done is, and this is where we've filed patents and such, where we say, look, we will quantify customer experience using CSAT. And that's a measure that the industry uses. But how do you compute the CSAT, the customer satisfaction score? And this is where what
CSAT stands for, customer satisfaction. What's
satisfaction?
The Okay.
SAT is the satisfaction. Right. So CSAT is the customer satisfaction. But what we have said is,
surely a customer unsatisfaction score would be much more appropriate for some of these industries.
We like to believe that every business wants good, high customer satisfaction. But what we do is we compute a customer-centric CSAT, rather than a customer satisfaction score based on, hey, this call was a polite call, positive call. All of those things are component parts to the larger picture.
Okay.
If I, as a customer, don't feel good about this call and don't feel satisfied, it doesn't matter how good the call was. It is still not a happy call for me. And I think this is really the thing, that we compute that CSAT score, and then we bring it back and marry it into other stuff. And we can go back and say, these guys are at a risk of churn. These guys are opportunities for upsell. And this is something that we do in a unique way, we believe, that makes a difference for the businesses.
Perfect. It sounds great. And I know in a while we'll see a demo of this in action, Samir, which is brilliant. So for those tuned in and adding to the comments, etc., we're going to keep chatting at the high level for the moment, but then we're going to start sharing the screen and actually see how this plays out. But tell me a little bit about, obviously, that CSAT score, right? But with the advances that we have in machine learning and AI and everything in the last couple of years, how is that really layered in on top of that data that we're getting back from these type of customer interactions?
Absolutely. I think Gen AI has opened doors that we didn't know existed. At least for me, it was revelation. And I've been following it for the last sort of 2 to 3 years. But there are things that we can do now and do it much more easily and more precisely than we could have done before. And I think we've tried to leverage Gen AI to the hilt. But we've also used our own sort of secret sauce, if you will. We've also used NLP, machine learning, to make sure that we pick on other things. And I'll give you an example. For instance, if I, as a customer, have a contract with the provider, an ISP, for instance, and I'm committed to being with them for 24 months, or I pay through my nose, I'm unhappy, but I might still be unlikely to leave because I don't relish the idea of having to pay those large sums of money as ransom. On the other hand, if I am in month 23 of that 24-month contract, it's like, I'm out of here. I've had it. And that factors into the whole story. So we do use machine learning along with our CSAT and other things to come back and say, this person is at a risk of churn. This other person, not so much. And that's the sort of information. But really the key, I believe, Shane, is, do businesses have this information in an easy to consume manner, in a timely manner? And if you have that, I think there is action to be taken very quickly, where somebody can keep their customers. And in the example that I shared with you, if these folks had come back to me the following day and said, look, you had a conversation, or more than one conversations, we noticed that you were not happy with this thing, here's what we can do for you, I would absolutely have stayed with them. And that story must repeat 1,000 times each day. That's 1,000 customers walking away each day, and nobody is any wiser. So
and that's it. And as you touched on earlier, not only retention, but also potential upsell and higher lifetime value and stuff. You mentioned sentiment and obviously sentiment analysis using vector search, etc. to do that. We have in MongoDB, amongst the developer relations team, we've got a few team members, a few colleagues of mine who've built some really good sentiment analysis demos, and they're brilliant, and that's the key thing I think that Gen AI has brought to the table. Is data has existed for ages, but it's getting the meaning behind the data that I think is and the ability, as you say, to surface that to the top and turn that into actionable insights as well too, I think is really really powerful. But Samir, you also mentioned when we were prepping for this call too, that you don't need all the data. You don't need a mother load of data to come in on this. You can get these insights with some kind of very kind of not a bare minimum of data, but really kind of niche areas that you're looking for in your solution. Right?
Correct. One of the big learnings for me, when I was sort of experimenting with AI and was part of an organization that delivered AI-based solutions, the challenge was less of AI and more of data. And companies would tell us all the time, our data is scattered all over the place. It's in bad shape. And yes, we love AI, but we're going to come to it when we've got our data story sorted out. And that sounded like something that might happen 10 years out, rather than something that would happen 2 weeks out or 2 months out.
Sure.
So from get-go, what we have focused on is, do not start that conversation with saying, I need all your data, and then we will create value for you. We've taken an approach where he said, give me your basic data. Give me your conversations, your interactions with your customers. Give that to me, and I can already create value for you. At that point, I can already create value for you. And if you can give me a little bit more data, I can create more value and I can refine it further. And if I can get more data still from your CSAT and such, you can see even more value, even more precise sort of results. And so we've taken an approach where you can bring in more data piecemeal. It becomes part of the overall sort of equation, and it gives you better results. It gives you more complete results. But you don't have to wait for an eternity while your data gets sorted out, that you'll start to see results. So on day 2 of being operational, you're actually seeing results. And then you can, of course, make it better.
Excellent. So as we all know, these conversations, if they're a phone call, are recorded. They always tell you that on the way in, right? And obviously
Indeed.
the chats that you might have are there's transcripts available too. So you're basically saying to your clients and customers that we'll work with what we already know that you're recording before we go into the huge minefield of what's left of all of the other data that might require, it's all in different silos, as you say, it's all in different places. You might need to transform it, and it's very unstructured, right? So you're working with what's easy for the client to give you straight away, and then enhancing that if they can give you more in the future.
That's exactly right. I'll tell you, I was speaking to, this is not in the context of Agmeta, but in a previous life, I was speaking to a major airline here in the US, and they painted such a scary story of their data that put a fear of God in me. It's like, I don't think I can fly this airline ever again. So we wanted to make sure that doesn't happen here.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. I think people can certainly resonate with that. I see a lot of people joining us again from all over the place, from London and Charlotte and LA and Iran and Brazil. So you're very welcome. If you've any comments or questions for Samir, please drop them into the chat, and we'll try and take care of them as well too. Usually when we get to the demo portion, that's when the comments start to come, because people can see what you're sharing and have a look, and they have their own questions. So we've spoken about the data, and we've spoken about how you approach towards that. But tell us a little bit about how you ended up on the MongoDB podcast live.
Yeah.
So when did you first start to use MongoDB, and how are you using it in Agmeta today?
Yeah. So, when we started our journey, we clearly needed some place to store the results. And the first sort of obvious conversation is one of the relational databases. And very
it's the
shortly
default
thereafter,
place for most developers or people to start, right? It's like, yeah,
exactly right.
These have been around for a long time. Let's just do it that way.
Exactly right. And very shortly thereafter, we also realized that that's going to be the wrong solution for us, because the data is going to be very unstructured. The different customers are going to want to see different things at different times. And a relational database is just not the right answer for us. And so we were looking at NoSQL databases, and we had a few choices there. I knew of MongoDB. I had partnered with MongoDB in the past, held them in great respect. But the important thing for us was we also knew where we are going with this. We do need capabilities in terms of vector database capabilities, in terms of GraphDB capabilities. And the choices that I had to make were, do I take a NoSQL database, then shuffle data from that database into a vector database, and then into a graph database? And I'm going to be doing nothing but moving data around between all of these databases, which is not clearly the goal of what we...
Yeah, that's a lot of heavy lifting. And there's a lot of, as we call it, ETL, extract, transform, and load, and keep that data in sync, keep it concurrent as well too. So which is a lot of extra overhead and generally extra cost as well too.
Absolutely. And our thought was, look, if there is a solution that can solve that problem, that's the one to go after. And at least our research shows MongoDB is a great solution that way. It solves all of those problems. It's a checkbox for each of these things. And the folks are easy to work with, which is never a bad thing.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that. And probably timing was good. So we launched Atlas Vector Search back a year and a half ago now, I suppose. So that probably coincided with when you were building out your solutions as well too, right, Samir?
That's correct. That's exactly right. And in our journey, we are sort of just at the point where we are saying, we are using the vector DB, enabling that use, and also looking at GraphDB capabilities to see if we can marry all of these and get a graph RAG solution as we take the next steps in our solution.
Okay. And you mentioned on our prep too that you're obviously using GCP as part of this as well too.
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because obviously they're a huge partner of ours in terms of hosting as well.
Yeah, GCP, when we first started with an idea and not much else, It was just a thought with nothing else, no company, no people, no nothing. It was just a thought. And we started with just the Google infrastructure, just go back to Colab and try something out and see how that works. And then we reached out to someone at Google Startup, and they helped us secure a good number of credits.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started to feel like this was the right platform for us. It did all the things that we needed to. We also use Google's Gemini Flash LLMs, and everything just sort of kind of clicked. And MongoDB works very nicely with it. It's all integrated well. So for us, it just turned out to be the right solution. And we've stayed with GCP, and we've stayed with MongoDB. And it just helps us not have to worry about the infrastructure piece and having to sort of spend our time on that. It leaves us time to go focus on what value we can create for our customers.
Excellent. And were you a part of the MongoDB startup program as well too, Samir?
Very much, still am.
Yeah, good. Hence you're here. And for those that are not familiar with the startup program, essentially it's a guided program. There's a very straightforward application. I'm part of the team that reviews a lot of those applications, and essentially you're getting Atlas credits, of course, to make it super simple to build your your first iteration, or your MVP, as people would call it as well too. But also insights and kind of extra technical support from our teams here as well too. And then obviously if things progress, we get an opportunity to do a case study, get you on the live stream, etc. So there's a little bit of quid pro quo, but I think in general it's in your favor to certainly join that as well too. Rajiv gave us a question there, but I think this is what we're going to see in the demo, which we're going to get to next. So he's on querying as to whether it's a real-time solution and how quickly the provider can know if the customer is a high-risk churn candidate.
Yeah.
So Rajiv,
now this is a great question. We struggled with this. I see a lot of contact center solutions today that do real-time stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And real-time meaning is in the conversation you're doing stuff. And what typically happens is they sort of hone in on certain keywords, and then based on that they do something. Okay. We made a conscious choice to not do this as a real-time millisecond based stuff. I just think it is a little overrated, because the contact center operates on different rules, and a marketing organization that has responsibility for churn and customer growth operates on different rules.
Okay.
Using the example that I used before, I didn't need somebody to tell me in a millisecond if they could solve my problem or not. But if they had come back to me the same day or the next day and said, you know what, we're going to bring down your bill by 40% or what have you, I would have happily stayed with them. I didn't need an answer right that second. I just needed somebody to take care of me. Sure. That's what we decided to do. Instead of saying we will do this in real time, we will solve it. I just don't think the contact centers and the growth organizations necessarily work in that sort of tandem at all. And case in point, I spoke to several marketing leaders, and I said, how much of your contact center information is being used? And they said, not very much. Typically what happens, Shane, is after every contact, every conversation, chat or otherwise, you get a survey in the mail. And, and that's a great way to sort of get information from the horse's mouth. You really want to know what the customer felt like. The challenge with that is the response rates on those surveys are 3 to 5%, which means that you're happily waiting for a response when your customer walks away, and you've got incomplete information there. In our case, we replace the survey entirely, because we can generate that customer-centric information using AI, and that makes a difference.
Okay. I see. That makes it, because I don't answer those surveys most of the time.
I have yet to find one that says we do. Yeah.
No, and I suppose, look, the ones I might answer are the ones that are only 1 or 2 questions. If they go 3, 4, 5 questions, I go, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm just gonna drop. Well, look, I think you framed the problem really well so far. You framed the insights as to why you went about this. You framed the fact that the technology has caught up to get those insights, and you can leverage GCP and Mongo and vector search, etc. as well too. I think it's probably a decent time to transition across to, let's see this in action, Samir. Let's show us what you have in the demo. So hopefully people can understand it a little bit more.
Absolutely. I'd love to do that. Let's get going here. I'll share my screen.
Perfect. We'll bring it up here now.
All right. And tell me when you see something.
Yeah, we can see that, and it's clear. I think hopefully the audience can see it as well too. And
okay.
And we didn't see your login, so that was good.
This is something that a customer would never see. The agents, the AI agents would process calls as they come in through REST API and such. So I'm doing this in a browser. It's kind of a forced thing, just makes the demo easier, and that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to pick up an audio file. I'm taking a telco customer service billing issue, and we'll process that. I'll let you listen to this thing, and then we'll also process it and see where we go with it.
Thank you for calling Sprite. My name is Rhea. How can I help you today?
Hi, my name is Francis, and I have a question about my bill.
Oh, hi, Francis. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have about your bill. May I have the account number or the phone number of the account?
Okay, the account number is 12345.
Great, thank you. So may I know what your question is?
Oh, it's like this. Last month, my bill was $25. But for this month, it shows that I need to pay $35. What's going on?
Oh, I see. I understand sometimes looking at your bill can be quite confusing. So let me check your account and let's go through this together, okay? By the way, do you have a copy of your bill right now?
Yes.
That's great. Let's go over your bill together and see the difference. Upon checking your account, yes, you're right. The bill last month was $25. However, this billing period, there is an additional charge of $10 for a data usage that totals to 3 gigs.
Okay. I really thought that my plan included data.
Well, no, it does not, but I will be happy to add a data to your plan. For only $5 more, you get 10 gigs of data, and it's more value for your money considering the current situation. How does that sound to you?
Okay, that sounds good.
That's good. So I'll add the data plan to your account right away, and since you are a valued customer, I will also take care of the $10 charge for you.
Hey, that's great.
So let me just process the reversal real quick.
Okay.
And it's done. So let me just recap everything. We have talked about the $10 charge. I have added a data plan of 10 gigs to your account. So that's going to be $5 more, in addition to the $25 that you are already paying every month. And the $10 charge for this billing period was already reversed.
That's strictly appreciated. Thank you.
You're welcome. And just to let you know, you can also check your data usage by texting data to 777. So have I addressed all your concerns today?
Yes, you have.
Well, it's been my pleasure to assist you, Francis. Once again, my name is Rhea. Thank you for calling Sprite and hope you have a great day.
Do the same. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very good. And
Excellent.
here, if you notice, can you read the screen, or Shane, if you can give me some direction?
Yeah, I think it's big enough for most of our viewers, I'd say. Anyway, if anyone has trouble, you might just drop it into the comments, but certainly clear to me. That's even better. That's perfect. And one other thing, Samir, do you see the little alert from StreamYard, the platform we're on? You can hide that. Do you see the stop sharing button down below?
Yes.
And then the hide beside that. If you hit
yes,
hide,
indeed.
that'll
Absolutely.
get it off the
That's helpful.
interface. Lovely.
Yes,
Perfect.
thank you. Great. In this particular instance, we created or computed a CSAT, customer satisfaction score of 5. And there, right below that, you see the reason. And this is a customer talking to you. So, you would have received a survey where you would have answered the question and provided your comments. This is what this is in a way. So
Okay.
I gave a 5 because my issue was completely resolved. The agent Ria was incredibly helpful, went above and beyond to assist me. Not only did she explain the unexpected charges on my bill clearly, but she also proactively offered a solution that was better value for my money, waived the unexpected charges. She did everything that you would expect from an agent. This guy clearly was unhappy about the $10 charge on the bill. And she addressed that. She put him on another plan. She took care of things. And this is why it was a 5. Now, just as a discussion point, if she had only sort of put him on another plan but not waived the charges, there's a good chance this would still be a positive call, but just not nearly as positive. And that might have been a CSAT score of a 4, where you are happy with the outcome, but not super thrilled. And then this particular instance, this guy is just really, really happy that, the charge is gone. She's, put him on a different plan that is better value and so on and so forth. So this is really what we capture here as a customer. Is there a resolution from a customer's point of view? Absolutely, there is, yes. Agent's effort was great. There were no unanswered questions. There was no follow-up promised here. So we do capture things like those that usually get left out, right? Because, an agent tells me, I'm going to call you tomorrow afternoon. I patiently sit by my phone. Nobody calls me. I'm not a happy guy. And this is the sort of thing that we would also capture. Then there is summary here for the entire call, which is a 3-minute call. We've got all of that here. That's fine. The sentiment was positive. We also capture the reason and the intent of the call. And that's going to be helpful in terms of understanding where the business is seeing the most traffic. So we do keep that information. This is kind of a summary in terms of a number of different things. But the really interesting part that I wanted to bring your attention to is the upsell tried. So one of the things we are tracking here, and this is all customizable in our platform, we said, did the agent try to upsell? And the answer here is yes. There was no mention of anybody buying anything or selling anything. Not once did the agent say, I'm trying to sell you something, or do you want to buy another plan? But she just quietly said, can I put you on another plan that's going to solve your problems, get you more credits, whatever. And there it is. So new monthly plan that was caught. Then what were the issues? Why did the customer call? And we use all of this information in what we can then show at an aggregate level and at an individual level. So this is really what the call is. We capture this information. And then after all of this, we do redaction as well. So if you're going to be keeping this information, we want to make sure you're on the right side of privacy laws. So we take care of all of that.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, no, that's very clear. You mentioned earlier, and back to the question, it wasn't real time, and there's loads of reasons it's not real time. But how long does it take to produce this? What you're showing us.
So I processed this in real time for you after I received the audio. I uploaded the audio and I said, let's go process. This was a 3-minute call. We processed in about 21 seconds.
Okay.
So it is near real time. It's not real time.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So there is, if somebody wants to take action as a business, within seconds, they can. I think what I have seen in my own experience is these things get done in batches rather than being done as one-offs. That's at least my take on it. Let me see what this looks like from a dashboard perspective. How do you consume all of this information when there are hundreds of calls or thousands of these calls happening all the time? So what we do is a few things. One, we show you sort of the actionable intelligence part of it. That's the intel here. There's also analytics from an aggregate perspective, and then the individual interactions, they all show up here.
Okay.
So the first thing we show is the organizational NPS score. This is the Net Promoter Score, which goes from -100 to a +100. And what we do is we extract the information out of the individual interactions, and then we compute the NPS scores based on how many times the interaction happened over a period of time. And based on all of that, for the sample of people that did interact, we can show what that NPS curve looks like. And in this particular case, you see these dots and the trend line is trending upwards, which is generally a positive sign.
Going in the right direction.
Is going in the right direction. Yeah. Then we also extract information out of the customers' calls and customers' interactions to say which are the biggest issues that the customers are facing over any given period of time. So here we are saying these are the major issues. I go here. This is a telecom setup. And the 4 big issues that they're seeing are competitive offers coming in, network issues, billing issues, handset refresh issues. They have got an old phone kind of thing. If you look at the competitive offer, I can go down and say, there are 3 big things here. People are saying, I'm getting free handsets, I'm getting free extras. These can be streaming services and such, or I'm getting lower prices from the competitor that you're not offering. And now you can see how many people called, what was their experience like. This is not so much saying I can look at the individual call details, it's just not useful. But knowing that red and green sort of mix here, you kind of say, what's going on in my business, right? For each of these particular things. And I can do a drill down into network issues related stuff or whatever it is. Now the operating
highly visual,
office,
and the traffic lights work really well in terms of understanding what things. You're taking me back. You're the same vintage as me, perhaps, where we remember you used to have to defrag your disks and you could see where all the chunks of storage were. This is super taking me back, Samir. But yeah, it works really well. It's like those stock tickers as well, too.
You bet. Exactly right. It does. I never thought of it that way, but it really does. The interesting thing here is the chief operating officer's office is looking at it and saying, what are my customers telling me? And this is not guessing. This is really knowing the stuff. And this is, again, the point where, does real time really matter? And the answer to me is not so much. You really want to see what your customers are talking about. And it doesn't have to be in a millisecond level, because you're not going to change your competitive offer situation or network issues in milliseconds. But once you know what's going on, where the customers are sort of yelling the loudest, you know what you need to do. So that's one part of it.
Perfect.
The other
and just
thing,
before
now
you advance off that, Samir, would it be the case that there's as much insights to gain from the green and the positive versus the yellow and the red, for example? Would they tend to look at what's working well versus what's working bad, or just concentrate on the
No, you're exactly right. This particular graphic is mostly about what the customers are bringing up. But I do have another graphic, and I'll show it to you in a second on a different tab, which tells you what's working well and what's not working well. So I will absolutely talk about that as well. But in this particular instance, the most important takeaway is, what are the customers talking about? What are the customers? What's causing them to pick up the phone or to get on a chat? And that's the thing that sort of comes to the fore here.
Excellent. And Kelson has spotted it was a lot of green. So this is obviously not a bad company you were dealing with here, but still work to do, right?
Still work to do. Otherwise, nobody would be picking up the phone or chatting. So here is the churn risk part of it. And what we've done here is we've taken just a tiny bit of data information, right? I said, give me the interactions. And I've taken a little bit more. I've said, look, don't tell me what your customer revenue is, but by the customer, tell me, are they in bucket 1 or bucket 2 or bucket 3 or 4 or 5? Bucket 1 is your least important customers. Bucket 5 are your most important customers, the guys that pay the most or what have you. And now I can tell you how many of these customers called today, how many of these customers called in the past week. So there's something going on with these guys. And I've picked just the 5 here in terms of saying the most important customers. I'm only interested in looking at those here. And now I'm showing you information. This is, again, we've taken all of the interactions. We've looked at the past week. We take the data from the CRM system or what have you, and then we'd run machine learning algorithms and come back and say, here was an interaction. This was the account number. This was the customer. When did they call? What was the customer satisfaction for that particular interaction? What were their major issues? And what's the probability of churn for these guys? And we produce this information in its entirety here so that you can see what went on. So if I click on Mary Todd here, Mary Todd, this is the account number, a very important customer in the bucket 5. Her computed NPS score is a 3. On a scale of 1 to 10, that's a 3, which means she is absolutely a detractor. And what's the reason for that? These are the interaction details over the past week. She had called in the last week. Major issues were network issues, excessive buffering, internet connection, customer satisfaction score of 1. Called again in the past week, same issues, customer satisfaction score of a 2. Called again today, same issues, customer satisfaction score of a 2. Stands to reason that she's thinking about other options.
Yes.
And this is the sort of thing that we can show very easily and say, she is a 0.87 probability she's going to be gone. And now what we do is we set it up so that you can receive an Excel with the same information at 4 p.m. every day, or at 3 times a day, or what have you. And this can go into some sort of a system that says, I'm going to send out a message that says we will make it right, or you called, you were unhappy, something along those lines, but solving the problems based on the issues that you have here. Then I do a similar sort of a thing with upsell, where somebody did have a good experience.
Oh, okay. Makes sense.
And I'd say they are very likely to buy from you because they had a good experience with you. So if I click on one of these, they called, we solved their problem. They had a high satisfaction score. They were a CSAT, a customer value 3, kind of middle of the road customer, very happy. This is an opportunity to see if they can become a more valued customer because we can sell them more services. They just had a good experience. Rather than wait, go back to them the same day or the next day and say, look, you called into the center. We noticed that you had this problem. We were glad we could resolve it. And by the way, we have this another service that we are offering 20% discount on for our valued customers like yourselves. And this is an upsell opportunity that usually gets lost because nobody saw that.
Okay.
So we solved that problem quite nicely as well. And again, Excels get sent out and such. In our next rev, what we are thinking about is automating that process with an agentic setup where we can take this information, pull it out of MongoDB, and then we can say, set it up so that based on the available promotions, based on the guidelines that have been set by the organization, we can send out those messages directly, bring back the results if somebody clicked on it or not, and close the loop on it, all without a human having to touch it. And then only escalate things that need to be escalated. So that's kind of the thought process there.
That sounds ideal. Obviously, a lot of people now are in that phase of agentic solutions. This is a prime example of how to use that. And I love the fact that you're using it to reduce the churn at one side of things, so retain that customer. And then you're also using the same understandings to look at towards the upsell as well too. So it's a win-win. And obviously from the clients that you speak to, Samir, it's a huge proof of value to them to be able to show them this from the extractions of their audio calls or their interactions, right?
Absolutely. And I think this is what we found interesting. They had these audio calls forever, and they still lost customers because they were waiting on surveys, or they had sort of customer journeys mapped out ad nauseum, but not the basic information about what the customer felt. How do you put that to use? How can you be responsive within the time frames that you can address something? And I think this is where we are creating that value. I'll go to the next tab here that talks about the more sort of cumulative analytics, if you will, that shows you several different things. Overall, if I look at my customer satisfaction scores over the last month, am I generally looking green or red or yellow? The details are almost not important, but it's kind of important to see how am I doing overall? Am I more green? Am I more red? Where are we? Same thing by sort of dates. Over the last month, am I generally doing okay, or am I generally not doing okay based on the customer satisfaction scores?
Okay.
And then you can get into the details. And this is something that touches upon what you had said earlier, Shane. When you get interactions from customers, they always have an intent. The customers called you because there is an intent. I have a billing problem. I have a return to be processed. I have a product support issue, whatever, something. And now you can see and say, look at it very easily and say, how am I doing qualitatively, even just how am I doing on intent and resolution? Which of my intents have the least number of resolutions? And here you can very easily see that I've got product support, that's a problem. I've got return and refund, that's a problem. I've got a bunch of things that have issues. And there are certain other things. Very easy. Intent and CSAT. Which intents have the lowest CSAT scores versus the highest CSAT scores? Which intents have positive versus negative versus neutral sentiments. So
Okay.
you can slice and dice this in multiple different ways, including looking at agents, which agents are doing well, which agents are not doing so well in terms
Okay.
of the
Right. Yeah. Down to
CSATs,
the people.
intents. So there's a ton of stuff here in terms of looking at that information and being able to tell where things are going right, where things are not going right, and then being able to take some action around it. And then
Okay.
final piece here is looking at the data for the calls or the interactions themselves, where I can say, look, here was the call that we made. This is the details of that call. Shows you every bit of information here. Yes, upsell tried, so on and so forth. We can look at the details here, the summary, the CSAT reason, other things. We have the transcript, we have the redacted transcript. All of this data is basically available to the customer to take action and then also go do things of their own that they wanted to do if they should want to access this data and do something with it.
Okay.
And that's really
And
what we are doing right now.
It's the nutshell piece and the details piece that you're using the LLMs to generate and create and store, right?
Absolutely. We are using LLMs there. We also use some of our proprietary information in terms of the customer-centric CSAT. This is where we've filed a patent for. Because we think most times the LLMs will come back with a vanilla answer that doesn't reflect the customer-centric view. And now we've tried this out with quite literally thousands of interactions, and our hit ratio in terms of getting the customer-centric view of CSAT is fairly high.
Okay.
So essentially,
are you using the standard LLMs, the Gemini LLMs, or are you using a fine-tuned version of them or anything, Samir?
No, we are not using fine-tuning. We do use LLMs, and we also are extremely careful in our use of LLMs because they do tend to hallucinate. And we've got to be careful because we cannot provide customers wrong answers. So we've tried to build guardrails around it. We've tried to use the features available within LLMs to make sure that creativity is minimum and we stick as close to truth as possible. So that's what we are doing.
Understood. While you're still on the dashboard screen from Agmeta, Rajiv had another question. To capture the data point that gives some sense of timing between the last interaction and when they churn out. Is there a notion of that? Maybe there was, and I wasn't paying attention as you went through it, but is there something there in the system? Yeah,
absolutely. So there is a time receive time here.
Okay.
That absolutely has every interaction captured by time, and you should be able to filter it. You should be able to get any of that information. We do provide filters for that sort of thing as well.
Okay.
So absolutely.
So I'm assuming, given Rajiv's question, he's probably thinking, going back to your original, I suppose, the issue that you had. You phoned 3 times, you didn't get a resolution. They didn't follow up within the day, so you churned. Whereas if you have the timing of all the interactions, you could say, hey, if we don't get back to this customer within 24 hours, 36 hours, they're going to go. So let's try and make sure that we have
absolutely correct.
Okay.
So in this example that I have on the screen with Mary Todd again, we're showing you her interactions in the past week. And I've picked a week as sort of that unit of time beyond which I think it just became stale. I cannot say she called 4 months back, so this must be relevant. It is not anymore. And the upsell opportunity also walks away 3 months later. So this is all talking about how can you be current within a day or 2 days, something that's a short window of opportunity where you are looking at it and saying, in the past week, this is what happened. She or he called these many times. And were we able to solve their problems? What kind of an NPS score was generated out of this thing? And is this customer worth keeping? I mean, let's be honest, right? There are the customers that spend a ton of money and you do want to keep them. And then there are those that call a million times but don't spend any money. And maybe it's good riddance. I don't know.
Yeah, they have those as well too, most definitely. Yeah,
right.
No, this has been a great demo. Is there other areas we haven't touched on yet, Samir? Or
I wanted to show this, just easy to do. And then, as I said, we are working on some of the things that automate the full cycle where the information sort of travels. The agents pick up the information, send it across, process it, come back, and then you only get to see what worked and what did not work. And then a human can do something with it.
Perfect. Well, look, I think as demos go, I think that's been highly illustrative of everything that we discussed at the beginning. For anybody, and we look again, we have a huge audience from all over the place as well too. For anyone with any questions, please drop them in the chat. We love to take care of them if we can. And I suppose the key thing then is if anybody works in this industry or works in this space, how do they get in touch with you, and or how do they try this out, or how does it work for Agmeta when you're looking at new customers?
Yeah, we've tried to make it simple. Instead of deep integrations to be built and a trial that's very difficult, proof of value, what we've said is, look, sign an NDA with us. Your stuff is going to be secure with us. We'll process 100 of your files, audio files or chat files, whatever you give us. We'll process that. We'll stand up a dashboard just like what you just saw here, and you will start to see if there's value here. If it's not solving any problems for you, if you already have solutions that do all of those things, wonderful, you don't need us. If on the other hand, you see value that you didn't see so far, then it's all worth doing. And it's a very simple integration. All of our stuff is REST API enabled, which means it's super easy. With MongoDB, what we have also done, Shane, is we've taken an approach where we are not super possessive about data. We bring in people's audio files, bring in their chat files, process them, and then we delete those source files. So we don't keep any of that. And I'm saying you can use my MongoDB instance, and that's fine. Or we can also use your own MongoDB instance.
Brilliant.
And keep the data with yourselves. We'll just keep the basic billing data. Everything else stays in your sort of autonomous system boundaries. Perfect. And that way life becomes a lot easier in terms of doing stuff.
Yeah, that's ideal. I suppose, look, obviously, we hear the stories all the time, customer data leaks, et cetera, and people are cautious, and rightly so. And look, obviously within Mongo and particularly with Atlas, we take care of most of everything, but there's always a case of, well, my data is coming, say, if they are already on Atlas, going to you and then back and not. So that makes a ton of sense. I love that idea. Yeah. That's a nice way to go. And I love that approach to a demo. Give us some of your data, not lots, but some, and we'll be able to prove our point, which is really nice way to go about it as well, too. So they just go to Agmeta and just kind of get in touch there, Samir, or what's the process?
Simple. You see the URL up here, at least I hope you do. Go there. There is a get in touch with us or request a demo or something similar. Just click on it, leave your contact information. We get in touch with you. And in 2 weeks, you have all the information you ever wanted, and see if this is a good match for you.
Excellent. Well, listen, that's a really good way to round out the Agmeta story. Thank you, Samir, for all of your time and effort into that. I wanted to just double back on, the founding of this and kind of scratching that itch and seeing that things could be better. Any words of advice we've got a varied audience who join these live streams all the time on the podcast live. Any words of advice for those looking to break out, to do something on their own, to create that startup from you, somebody experienced in this space?
I think there is a proverb, look before you leap. I think that's done a great deal of disservice to humanity. I think it's better to leap before you look, because more times than not, we walk ourselves out of opportunities. I think we tell ourselves, we convince ourselves that this is too difficult, it's not going to happen. And there will be difficult times, that's a given. It's a roller coaster ride for sure. But take that step and you'll find out. The other thing is just the commitment. It is, people think of startups as sort of straight lines that do really well, but it's actually an up and down like this that goes on. But it is a fulfilling journey. It is an interesting journey. You have only one life to live. Might as well try it.
I love it. And I suppose going back to what I was saying at the introduction was, obviously I was trying to say that the successful startup founders tend to be on the older side of things. But the younger startup founders, exactly that. They've leaped. They don't know what they don't know. So they just get on and do it. So I think that's incredible piece of advice. And, I had my own startup for about 13 years, probably a bit too long to be called still a startup, but but I agree wholeheartedly. Just jump straight into it, and if you've an itch to scratch, and particularly if it's an area that you're keen in, it's hard work. Don't get me wrong, I would imagine. And as I said to you before we came on air, it was a holiday in the US yesterday, but you were still emailing me. So this is the way it works. Any final thoughts or words for our audience before we go? And I'm just watching the chat that comes in, and we're just getting some nice compliments, and I appreciate that. And all the viewers who joined in. So it's been great to have you on board, and do join in for future shows as well too. It's really nice that we can share these type of stories. And I think for me, Samir, you really you shared the problem very straightforward, very eloquently. It's a problem we generally understand, but we don't see the nuances within it. And I thought you did that really, really well. I love the fact that you've jumped, through kind of the problem, and then actually how the more recent technology of LLMs and using GCP with their Gemini models, etc., has helped. And then you gave us some nice thumbs up for MongoDB and Atlas, and particularly Atlas Vector Search, in storing the vectors of your data alongside them in the same document, essentially. So there's no round trip, there's no extraction, there's no transforming and loading data here, there, and everywhere. So you did my job for me there in the middle of our conversation as well, too. A bit of the pitch. So I appreciate
I'm
that.
a fanboy. So, there we go with MongoDB.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And for those that want to learn a bit more about MongoDB, if you're not so familiar, as I said earlier, we have sentiment analysis demos, etc., and you can go to developer.mongodb.com to check those out. It would be remiss of me. Most of my colleagues create content there all the time, and go in there and search for Gen AI or search for semantic search, etc., as well too. And then obviously the startup program that you mentioned, just search for MongoDB startup, and you'll see it there. You'll see what we have on offer. Super simple application form as well too. Samir, it's been a pleasure to have you on board. I hope you enjoyed yourself while it's here. It's been a great guest, and I have said this a number of times, and I'll say it again. I had a boss who said the reward for good work is more work. So Samir, as Agmeta progresses, I want to get you back on the show to show us what you've done, particularly when you get to those agentic applications that you say AI is going to go off and do some of the heavy lifting for you. I'd love to see that in action, because I think that's the next step. We have our chatbots, etc., but getting the tools to do something, to take what I would call the mundane or the drudgery out of the normal work and allow people to do the high value stuff, is where agentic AI solutions are all at. And I very much look forward to that as well too.
Perfect. Shane, it's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
No, the pleasure's been all mine, Samir. So listen, from me in pretty cold-ish west of Ireland in Limerick, to you and Samir in San Francisco. Still cold, but not quite as cold as the rest of parts of the US. It's been a pleasure to have you on board. For all our viewers who joined in and left questions and those fabulous comments towards the end, thank you so much. Keep an eye on MongoDB's YouTube and LinkedIn for future shows. Generally, most Tuesdays, you got to listen to me and an informative guest such as Samir. So from me, Shane McAllister, thank you so much. Samir, it's been a pleasure to have you. Do take care and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care, folks.